Good evening and welcome everyone to our Wake County Board of Education regularly scheduled meeting. It is October 19th. It is 5:30 now. Call this meeting to order. We have all board members here present, so we do have a quorum, and we're along with Superintendent Moore and Board Counsel Jonathan Blumberg. So with that, again, we do have a quorum. If you would stand with me, I'm the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, we'll move right into our agenda. Again, thanks everyone for joining us, those that are here with us in person and those that are joining us online or virtually. Welcome to you all. We'll start with our comments and move to Superintendent Moore for your comments. Good evening, Superintendent Moore.
Good evening, Chair Sutton and board members. Congratulations to Knightdale High Principal Keith Richardson and our Heritage High Assistant Principal Bonnie Mwanda on being named our 2021-22 Principal and Assistant Principal of the Year. Mr. Richardson has served as principal of Knightdale High School since 2019. Before that, he served as principal of Crossroads Flex and York Elementary, assistant principal of Sycamore Creek Elementary, and principal intern at Leesville Road Middle. He has received praise from his colleagues and many others for his servant leadership, for celebrating achievements among his staff, and for his commitment to strengthening the school's relationships with the community. That included expanding the partnership with Wake Tech, even amid the pandemic, to increase student participation in career and college promise opportunities. Ms. Mwanda has served as Assistant Principal of Instruction at Heritage High since 2017. Prior to that, she worked as an intervention coordinator at Heritage High and a math teacher in Union County and Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. She was cited by her students and fellow staff members for building a welcoming school environment for all students. She is also known for her commitment to doing whatever it takes to best meet the needs of every child, even in a school of more than 1,800 students. One of her former students called her the most hardworking and influential woman I have ever known. Congratulations again to these two outstanding school leaders, as well as the other finalists. I would also like to note that October is National Principals Month, which gives me the opportunity to thank each and every one of our excellent principals. As I've said before, effective school leadership has been more important than ever in our school communities as we have navigated the challenges of this pandemic. Our principals have worked hard to keep their staff members connected and their students and families engaged. We simply can't thank them enough for all they have done to help us weather the storm. And I do hope that parents, students, and staff will find some way this month to express their gratitude for all the principals who have made a difference in their lives. Last Monday was Indigenous Peoples Day, and many of our schools honored Native American people and commemorated their histories and cultures. Staff members received resources to help them appropriately acknowledge and celebrate this day with students. This is the second year we as a district have officially recognized Indigenous Peoples Day, and we look forward to this becoming a vibrant yearly tradition. But this important learning isn't just limited to one day. Native American history and culture are also taught throughout the entire school year in the secondary social studies curriculum. Our strategic plan core belief number 5 states that the Board of Education, Superintendent, and staff all value a diverse school community that is inviting, respectful, inclusive, flexible, and supportive. This work is part of our district's strategic ongoing efforts to ensure that we are inclusive and supportive of all parts of our community. Specifically, our hope is to ensure that all students and families see themselves lifted up in a positive light in our schools. In closing, I, along with several board members, had the privilege today of joining representatives from the U.S. Department of Education and from the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, touring 2 schools that have received national recognition for promoting environmental sustainability. We began at Abbott's Creek Elementary, which was named a Green Ribbon School in 2019 by the U.S. Department of Education. The school has implemented a program to reduce waste in the cafeteria, and students regularly monitor the activities and life cycles of monarch butterflies on campus, among many other initiatives. We then toured Athens Drive Magnet High School, which was held up as a model when our district successfully applied to receive a District Sustainability Award from the U.S. Department of Education earlier this year. Tour highlights there included sustainable gardens, a solar panel, and a report on the school's various recycling initiatives. I was proud that these schools were able to impress our visitors with the hands-on way they are instilling in their students the knowledge and passion needed to protect our world. And while these two schools got the spotlight today, environmental stewardship is a value shared district-wide, not only in the classroom, but also in the way we build and maintain our facilities. My thanks to all of our students and staff members who embody these values, and to the state and federal officials who took time today to recognize just some of our efforts. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore. I echo all of your comments, and again, my special thanks and appreciation to all of our principals, and particularly to Principal Richardson and Assistant Principal Mwanda. Congratulations to you both, and again, thank you to all of our principals for the amazing job that you do for all of our students each and every day. I also want to take this opportunity to take a moment this evening to mention the recent passing of Joyce Nelson, a remarkable teacher in the history of Enloe High School. Ms. Nelson recently retired from Enloe after a career that spanned 44 years. During that time, she shaped the lives of several generations of students and was recently awarded the Order of the Longleaf Pine, the highest award given by the state of North Carolina for exemplary service and exceptional accomplishments. Those who knew her, and there are literally thousands, both appreciated and benefited from her remarkable career. She will be missed and remembered. If I could ask you to join me in a moment of silence in honor of Joyce Nelson. Thank you very much for that. Vice Chair Mahaffey.
Thank you, Chair Sutton. Many of our schools celebrated Walk to School Day, and I had the pleasure of joining the Olive Chapel Elementary Clippers, and it was just a great way to promote safe routes to school and a healthy walking environment where several members of the Town of Apex staff and elected officials, as well as some members of the Apex Police Department, joined that walk. Last week, Thursday, I was invited to the groundbreaking of a large business that's coming to Wake County. And this has not happened in my time on the board, but I really want to thank the folks at Fujifilm Diosynth Biotechnologies for including our school district and talking about how important education is in their minds for their workforce, not just the higher ed institutions that are in this area. They had Chancellor Woodson of NC State speak, but recognizing the build that our K-12 institutions have. And it was very nice to see that. We hear that a lot from our businesses. It was nice to see that recognized for a business partner, hopefully, that will be coming. And they're looking to bring 600 jobs to the area. And I know more businesses are looking because of this. And the life-saving medicines technology that are going to be coming will hopefully be Wake County graduates creating that, because we know they're fully capable of that. We have upcoming virtual meetings on the enrollment proposal, and I want to thank our community members and parents for posting on that Granicus forum. It is so important for us to hear your feedback, and thank you to our communications team for monitoring that during this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Mahaffey. I'll start to this side, and I'll start with Board Member Johnson-Hostler.
Thank you, Chair Sutton. I will start by acknowledging your point of your first moment of silence, that we have certainly been in a time of mourning, and I just keep reminding myself that it is a part of the circle of life, no matter how difficult it is. And I will leave one giant for Ms. Scott to talk about in her comments, assuming she probably has it in her comments as well. But certainly she will discuss it. But I also would like to spend this time. We talked last time about bullying, both cyber and in person. And I want to remind us, as we think about those things, we also have to acknowledge both sides of what's happening, as I discussed at our last board meeting. And one of the things that we don't often know is what kids are experiencing that lead to those things. And unfortunately, Wake County lost 5 lives way too early on Sunday morning. All students or former students of Wake County Public Schools. And so we'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that. We certainly don't know why things happen the way that they do, but truly way too young to have made their full imprint on this world. And I want to remind people that when we acknowledge those 5 lives that we lost, that there are families and communities that love those lives no matter what. And so I want to remind our community, and I brought up bullying, because adults have a tendency to state what they think about people. And I also want to remind adults that sometimes that feels like bullying to the other side, who are receiving comments about who those students weren't and what they were. And so I want to acknowledge for adults, Ms. Scott told us several weeks ago that adults are often the best people to model good behavior, and I'm going to ask that people do that while we have families and communities grieving those 5 young lives that we lost way, way too early on Sunday morning in a car accident. It's not a call any of us as parents ever want to receive, and so I would ask all adults to think about that before you start talking about what those students may have been doing and why the accident may have occurred, that they do have families and communities attached. And so I'll ask people that if you pray, to pray for those families and those communities. And if you don't, send some love and light and think about ways in which we can reinvest in those families and in those communities during this time of harm versus hold people at a standard that none of us would understand how this feels at this time. So I'm begging our community to be thoughtful and kind during this time to those families and those communities. I will end on good news. We celebrated Arts in Action, and many of you know, as a non-art person, I love the arts. Literally, Dr. Martin knows I went to ballroom class with him one time. Not my gift, but I enjoy it. And he entertained me. But nonetheless, you all know I do love our arts, and my daughter and Miss Cash's granddaughter go to a studio, CC & Co., who started a nonprofit that I serve on their advisory board for, called Move It Raleigh. And the focus is to get all folk moving, including those of us who can dance and love it and those of us who can't. So we did Earth Day in a Park. We did a partnership with Marbles for people who aren't dancers like myself. But we also, during Arts in Action Week, hosted for all Wake County schools a day for teachers, dance teachers, to get professional development from well-known stars. The biggest one for kids was Costa Mayer, who are TikTok phenomenons, who I did not know that. But there were actually 3 other students who are graduates of Wake County who have made dance their career professionally, who volunteered their time to our students and our teachers. And it was clear love from our educators who asked that we continue professional development, even if it's through Zoom, and also asked how could we get their students there. But we had nearly 100 students from Wake County who were able to participate at no cost to them. And those students, I truly will say, and I'd be remiss if I did not say, Robert Green is my favorite to mention, but there's also Kirsten Stewart and Evan, those 2 went to Millbrook. Robert went to Inlow, but I always bring up Robert Green because he was one of those students who couldn't afford to dance when he was in high school, and the studio owner picked him up and allowed him to explore, and he's been on more prominently Taylor Swift, more recently Little Baby, but he has been on tour with many, many people. He continues to give back to Wake County Public Schools, and so I want to highlight those 3 Wake County Public students who have made it big and have come back to Wake County. So again, I wanted to end on a high note that we do have our amazing students who always come back and give back to our students.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson-Hostler. Mrs. Cash.
Miss Johnson Hostler's daughter is an amazing dancer. And I think she said something to my granddaughter the other day, and she said, she talked to me. And she said, so she was so excited that Gabby talked to her. So it was amazing dancer. I'm glad you brought up the students. That's been sad. That was a shock on Sunday morning. So it's just way too soon for those young people. Did walk to school with Hunter, with Miss Scott. We were in that large group of people that walked to school. It was a very large group, and had a good time that day. Tried to keep up with everybody, but we made it. Got a ride home with somebody else, but and I visited Durant Middle School this last couple of weeks. East Wake High School with Miss Mahaffey and Miss Scott. I went to Millbrook High School to watch a little bit of their COVID tracing going on. Went to a Wakefield High School homecoming game against Millbrook.
Wait, I missed you at that game.
You did. And I left when they were tied, but I'm not going to talk about who won because I love both those schools so much. And again, I'll just finish with saying that going with State Superintendent, and Superintendent Moore was there today, and Catherine Truitt, and the board members from the State Board of Education to Abbott's Creek was really a highlight today. The sustainability that these kids are doing, and we need, and you talk about it often, Mr. Haggerty does, that they do, watching them put their trays away and separating their food into this and their trash into this, and then taking their compost out to their gardens. And it's really important that all young people learn that. And they were going to release a monarch butterfly today, but the butterfly just wanted to hang out in their hands. So I don't know if he ever flew away or not, but he's still hanging out in somebody's fingers. So they had a good day. So it was a good day in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cash. Mr. Haggerty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been a busy couple of weeks since the last time that we've met. I had a great opportunity to go out. I got to see our first choral concert since the pandemic, to have everybody live and on stage and singing. It was just really, really beautiful, and the kids loved it. The parents were super excited about it. It was just a wonderful event. Cross-country meets, and even got to go to a very exciting tailgate before one of our homecoming games. And I won't spoil the results because I know there's some rivalries up here, but we won. People have been excited going around talking about the new high school that we're going to talk about later in the meeting, so I won't talk too much about that, except that there's a lot of great excitement, and people are looking forward to this and see this as another great step. Another big activity this weekend, we've seen more and more people come together to advocate in support for taking action on the Leandro decision. And so there were a lot of great public events. We've been joined, we passed the resolution at our last meeting. The Wake County Commission has come out and made their voices known that they support this action. We're seeing more parent groups, community organizations, and get behind education, because this should be something that should unite everybody. We might have different ideas about, local control versus state control, different ideas about curriculum and certain policies, but just the idea that we need schools open, teachers in building, good pay, good curriculum, good facilities. These are things that we should all be able to agree on. And so I'm hopeful that as the legislators continue their budget negotiations, some of these voices will be heard. Finally, Ms. Mahaffey had mentioned the Granicus Forum and the reassignment plan. There's a lot of impacts of the reassignment plan in District 7, so we've been going out and talking to a lot of people. And I really appreciate the time that staff has taken to help answer questions, to provide me with information and maps. And everybody, even some are happy with moves, some are unhappy about moves, but everyone has been very civil, very understanding, and just looking for ways to understand the issue and argue their points. And so I want to thank everybody who's come together for that. I know there'll be information coming about some virtual information sessions. And if you're in an area that's impacted by the reassignment plan, please try to schedule that you can participate in one of these sessions, because I'm taking all of the feedback and I'm passing it on to staff. But if you have a chance to come out, hear this on your own individually and advocate your position, hopefully, you'll learn a little bit something about the district's plan, and then the district will hear your concerns and your feedback directly. Finally, just one last thing. Chair Sutton, you gave a nice tribute to Joyce Nelson. Ms. Nelson was one of my teachers. So, and to this day, many, many years later, I can still tell you about the impact that she had. She would push students, but she prepared us. we had her for senior English, and she did so much to prepare us for going from high school English to college English and what the expectations were. Again, you know, you hear the expression, tough but fair. But she really did push kids to reach their potential. And like I said, to this day, I can remember that class and everything she did for us, and she's very much appreciated, and she'll be missed. And again, our love goes out to the family. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hegarty. It's not often that we have someone here at the table who was taught by someone, but just the impact of her. And you know, we have a lot of teachers, and we lose teachers throughout the course of the year, but we raised Ms. Nelson because she was with us for 44 years as a teacher, and there are not many teachers who also received the Order of the Longleaf Pine. So she was definitely a special individual. Mrs. Carter.
Thank you. And kind of taking a little side note, one in my notes here to speak on, but just noting the importance of teachers and other school staff, and really looking forward to, we've discussed it multiple times, really addressing funding and addressing increasing pay for our school staff, and how important that is to take action sooner than later. So I just want to throw that out there, but kind of side note there. But since the last meeting, I mentioned right before, I was heading to the Cary High 12 Angry Jurors. It was their first live theatrical performance since March. Phenomenal job. The cast and crew, and I was kind of caught off guard. It's like, really? We're going to sit on stage? We, the audience, were sitting on the stage. The couple of times I caught myself like jumping because there was so much emotion and just like, you know, sarcasm, which is awesome. But the students were just amazing. And it was just so great. You could just feel it. And the audience was, you know, and some of the students were next to me like, oh yeah, they're getting, you know, I was like, are they going to get this sarcasm? They totally got it. And it was just a great experience, and just well done to the director, Miss McCormick, as well. Just wanted to throw that out there. I've also had some sport events. I try to attend what I can, and did a volleyball for the first time at Green Hope, and they won that one. I won't talk about the one after that one. And just great energy, and actually great to see so many students come out and support them. It was senior night, so had, you know, the blown up pictures and everything. So that was great to see. And actually I stayed after a little to talk to some of the referees, because there's been a, you know, staffing issue. I mean, you know, we're having staffing issues, but, you know, our high school students can't play if we don't have referees. So I stayed around after the game, walked them out and talked to them, and then just thank them for what they're doing, because if they don't show, our kids can't play. So, they were just talking about just the level of intensity that they have noticed, and how much these students are just, it's like all in. I mean, not that it wasn't before, but it's like for them, some the ones that were there that night have been doing it for quite some time. And they said the difference was just unreal to them. And so they just keep coming back because, you know, they love it. But I just thought that was great. And Friday was the homecoming parade along Walnut Street at Cary High. And I just have to say, I think I could use one of those like every week. I know it's a lot of work, but it was a hopping. It was great to see the students in the parade, the floats, and three of my feeder schools in District 9, Reedy Creek Middle, East and West Cary, were there. The band, they were participating in the band, and they had some of their athletes as well. And it was just lots of fun, and the kids were just out. Well, actually, I don't know who was having more, the kids or some of the staff, I'm saying, you know, were really enjoying themselves, and the adults along the line. And their Navy Junior ROTC. So it was just a great event. And the other event that I attended last night really focused on, I know I've mentioned several different awarenesses for this month, but another one is blindness awareness. That do impact some of our students and their families. And there were two young adults that really led this webinar. It was a Turning Insight and Vision into Awareness, and it was Maya Warren and Billy Pickens. And I just want to mention them because they really took the time to explain the history, because it's a relatively, to me, newer awareness month. Started in 2009 by the Little Rock Foundation. And both of them discussed their blindness, or if they had the visual impairment, and actually their struggles, but also their victories in school, and the importance of self-advocacy and working on that at a younger age, and giving some advice along that and involvement in IEP meetings as students. So it was a great thing for me to hear as not only a board member, but several parents were on there, and it was just very helpful to know. And I think, too, when looking at our schools and encouraging that for our kids to feel that's okay to speak up for yourself and advocate for what you're needing in school. So just want to quickly mention that. And then also, if you are heading to the State Fair, because I know some folks are, I just want to encourage you to go to the Scott building and check out our student art. So there's quite a bit out there, and just lifting those kids up, because what they're doing is fantastic. I'm not an art person. I've always kind of get joked about if I tried to do so with my students, but I have fun doing it, and so many of our students their talent is just, to me, just mind-blowing. So please check that out. And then lastly, I'll just reminder, this Sunday at 4 p.m., I'll be having another D9 Connection virtual meeting there to listen to any concerns you have. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carter. Mrs. Scott.
Thank you, and good evening. Appreciated hearing my colleagues talking about our fine arts performances starting up again indoors. I really love seeing those happening, and the theatrical performances coming back. And it's really amazing when you consider that, I mean, some of these students have not been on stage for several years. And as you look into your middle school fine arts programs, I mean, you have to think some of those parents have really never had that experience. So if you're a music parent, make sure you extend your patience, and you'll, once you hear your kiddo play, it's all worth it. I really did appreciate Ms. Mahaffey and Ms. Cash coming to Eastwick High School, just taking a look at their facilities there. And also, I was really glad they had the opportunity to meet Mr. Alston. He is a phenomenal principal. He works so hard. He knows his community. He knows his staff. He knows his students. And he really knows his community. He coaches these kiddos when they're little. And I think it's just a great opportunity. And I would love to go back again. So if any of my other colleagues have the time, I'd love to go back with you. And a few years ago, prior to serving on the school board, when I had a little bit more free time, my family and I used to buy mini packages for the Durham Bulls. And one year, the Bulls lost every single game in our mini package, except for the one that I had hurt my back, so I didn't get to go to it. And I say that because, of course, our principal of the year and our assistant principal of the year are from District 1, and I could not attend the celebration that evening because I was sick. My COVID test results, which were negative, did not come until later that night, so certainly did not want to expose 194 principals, assistant principals, and so forth to some illness. But I'm so thankful for the recognition, and also just a reminder, Heritage Middle School, we have Ms. Pride is currently the teacher of the year. So that's a District 1 sweep. But I'm so thankful that others have the opportunity to see the amazing teachers, the amazing administrators, and the dedication that we have in Eastern Wake. And I also ask that you please extend your thoughts and prayers to the Knightdale community and the Zebulon community. I know many saw in the news that a young officer was killed in the line of duty, and his father was a police officer and chief of police in Zebulon for many years. Eastern Wake is a close-knit community, and this hits hard and it hits deep. And I know that Knightdale High School really appreciates the relationship that they have with the SROs there. I mean, they do phenomenal work with the kids and in the elementary schools as well, with the DARE program. And I have to, we lost a great person, former Mayor Frank Eagles. He was a powerhouse, and I could say many things about him. But the biggest thing he taught me as an elected official in this role was do what's right for the kids. And he would say that all the time. And sometimes when the school system would do something that he thought was not the right thing for the kids, and I know Superintendent Moore was on the receiving end of many of those phone calls, and so were many of my colleagues, because I know Ms. Johnson-Hostler and Ms. Kushner were also very close with Frank. He would let you know. And you would explain the reasons. No, it's this, that, and that. And he would say, so?
No, my favorite is, you're the District of No, Ms. Johnson-Hostler.
Yes. But he really was the epitome of how I see many servant leaders lead, in that you may not see every time Ms. Carter goes out to a school and helps with a tree or plants. You may not know every time Mr. Haggerty has reached out to his schools, and all of my colleagues. You don't necessarily see the work that they do, and Frank really lived that, where he did things because it was the right thing to do. He did not post pictures of himself on social media doing things because he just did it. And as somebody, the impact he had on this world and everyone who knew him was so great. And we're lucky to know many of the things he did, but as someone said, I don't think we'll ever know just how much he did. At the beginning of the pandemic, as someone who was health compromised, loaded up his truck with the meals from the stations and went around in mobile home communities and made sure that folks who were in charge of those efforts knew where those students were, where those families were. And that's just one day, that's just 1 year in the life of Frank Eagles. So he will be missed, but we are all better for knowing him. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Scott. Dr. Martin.
Thank you, and great tribute to Frank. Frank was a friend, a wise man, and a very practical man, and he will be missed. Superintendent Moore recognized, but I too want to recognize that the 11th was Indigenous Peoples Day. I think it's very important that we recognize that all but the indigenous peoples are immigrants. And the indigenous peoples of this country contributed much in history, in culture, in language. One of the things I think that impressed me the most, as I've learned about particularly the Indian Education Council here, is the students in our schools reminded us that the indigenous peoples aren't just history. Indigenous peoples are today. And so we don't just celebrate the contributions of history, the contributions of the past, but we recognize and celebrate each of the indigenous peoples in our schools, in our community. And thank you for the ongoing contributions. And just an important reminder that we don't just recognize history, but we recognize contributions today. I also had the privilege of joining the group from the U.S. Department of Education and the North Carolina Department of Instruction as they celebrated the Green Ribbon Schools program, a national program of which several of our schools have been honored. I had the privilege of joining the group touring Athens Drive High School, one of the schools in my district. Particular shout out to the students. People were welcomed by Principal Mares, who does an outstanding job of leading that school, but the students absolutely stole the show. From the band who welcomed us, the Athens band is an impressive group, led by an amazing conductor. But listening to the students and seeing how sustainability is integrated across the curriculum was quite impressive and quite impressed the state and the national leaders who came to visit with us. From the art rooms to the science rooms, quite impressive. In fact, I would say one of the art students who, was part of the contributing, they weren't tour guides, they were really educators, but how she was talking about how, in one of their art projects, how, in art you often have multiple layers in the visual art, right? Multiple layers of any kind of a project from the background to the foreground. And she had a very nice piece looking at the layers of sustainability as well, and just sort of interfacing those ideas that are so critical from the science to the art of understanding sustainability, from the health impacts and programs to the technology programs. The students did just a phenomenal job, and folks walked away taking the experience from the Wake County school system to the state and national level. So hats off to the students. You all did a fantastic job. Finally, as I have been doing for the last quite a while, I want to give the update on COVID statistics in the school system in the county. So if you look at the reported cases in our schools, they've slowly been going down, although 2 weeks ago we did have an uptick in the number of cases reported in our school system, back down again this last week. But where we're at, we're still 2.5 times higher than the high from back in May, and almost 3 times higher than we were back in January. So going in the right direction, but still we have a ways to go. Here in Wake County itself, in the schools, the week of 10/3, there were cases in 110 schools. In the week of 10/10, that dropped to 95 schools. The good news is that the week of 10/3, 152 schools had 2 or fewer cases. In the week of 10/10, 163 schools had 2 or fewer cases. So schools are working hard to try to keep environments as safe and productive as possible. Here in Wake County, overall, cases continue to drop, although we're at a current little bit of a plateau. We're at 131 cases per 100,000 population. And again, from the CDC's recommendation, 100 cases per 100,000 population is considered high transmission. So we're still significantly above that. Looking at the the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services age disaggregated data, and their data always lags a little bit, but the numbers that we have for all in Wake County, their reported weekly numbers for the week of 10/3 were 145 cases per 100,000, went to 129 cases per 100,000. That's for the entire population. For the 5 to 9-year-olds, the week of 10/3, we were at 204 cases per 100,000 population. That went up last week, the week of 10/10, to 229 cases per 100,000 population. And unfortunately, that age cohort, the 5 to 9-year-olds, is the top cohort in the county, almost double what the overall county rate is. The 10 to 14-year-olds, the week of 10/3, were 179 cases per 100,000 population. The week of 10/10, that dropped to 167. The 15 to 17-year-olds, the week of 10/3, were 123 cases per 100,000 population. The week of 10/10, last week, there were 121 cases per 100,000. So this is the first time in a very long time that any of these cohorts have dropped below the county average. So the high schoolers have have in these last 2 weeks dropped below the county average. That's good news. Keep it up, high schoolers. We all have to work together to have the trends go down. But that's our update for the last 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Mrs. Kushner.
Thanks, and I'll wrap it up. Thank you to all my colleagues for your heartfelt tributes to those we've lost. in the last 2 weeks. Thank you. I'll leave it at that. It was wonderful to celebrate our principals, our assistant principals, as well as Ms. Johnson-Hostler and I were able to go to the Hispanic Heritage Celebration, which was a great virtual gathering of many of our educators and community leaders that serve not only our Hispanic students and our Spanish-speaking students, but other students who are from international descent. And it was highlighted, Dr. Rangel was able to highlight the Family Academy programs that we have in up to 6 different languages. They're having Facebook Live meetings. So please share with your communities those opportunities that we have within our school system to reach out to families whose first language are not English and need to learn not only how to engage in the school system culturally as well as in their language so that they can maximize opportunities for their children. So thanks to that wonderful gathering. And thanks to Mr. Winters, Ms. Kimsey, and Mr. Carrozza for coming to the District 6 Board Advisory Council meeting last Wednesday. We talked about COVID recovery funding, which we continued in the great budget session we had. Ms. Cash, thank you, as well as the student enrollment plan. So thanks to all who came out last week. And I wanted to also lift up wonderful work being done by our students. The Sanderson Equity Team led a Big Waves from Big Wake session last week. They had students from Sanderson, Millbrook, Enloe, Heritage, as well as Rollsville. Frank would have been very proud of them. Just talking about their experiences in the pandemic, their experiences coming back to school full-time, the need for social, emotional, and mental health supports for our students. This is as well as the need for flexible time. Anytime I talk with our students, it's the best meeting I have of the week, month, year, and they will lead us both out of this crisis, and they will show us the way. So great gratitude to the Sanderson Equity Team for leading that student work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kushner. That concludes our board member comments and comments from the superintendent. Board members, before I ask for your approval of tonight's meeting agenda, I would like to add one item to our action agenda, and that is a revision to the 2021-2022 WCPSS calendar. So again, adding one item to our action agenda, and this is a revision to the 2021-2022 school year calendar. So with that revision, I would like to ask for a motion to approve tonight's agenda as amended.
Chair Sutton, I'd like to make a motion that we approve tonight's agenda with that amended item added on calendar revision. Thank you.
Second.
Got a motion from Mrs. Kushner, second from Ms. Johnson-Hostler to approve tonight's agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, show by sign of aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Tonight's meeting agenda is approved. That takes us to our information agenda for this evening. We've got 2 items, I believe there. The first is a recognition of Disability History and Awareness Month. So, good evening, Assistant Superintendent Karen Hamilton.
Board Chair Sutton, Superintendent Moore, and members of the board, thank you for allowing us to address the Wake County Public Schools System's 9th annual recognition of Disability History and Awareness Month. We are delighted to continue this annual celebration and are grateful that our board provides us the time and space to spotlight what is for us a very special month. Bringing this information to you tonight is Joe McKenna.
Board Chair Sutton, Superintendent Moore, and members of the board. In 2007, the General Assembly of North Carolina designated October as Disability History and Awareness Month in order to expand the public's knowledge, awareness, and respect for persons with disabilities. Later in the same year, the WCPSS School Board issued a resolution outlining that during the month of October, our schools will provide intensive instruction on disability history, people with disabilities, and the disability rights movement. The link to the full document is at the bottom of your page. Since September 2012, our district has engaged in an annual celebration of our students with disabilities, led by their teachers. Oftentimes, this is a celebration that includes the entire school community. A celebration and guidance memo for Disability History and Awareness Month was provided to school and central level staff on October 5th, 2021. This year, the district is embracing the language of "from here, anything is possible." For our students who embody unique abilities, and in light of our continued movement through a pandemic, anything is possible looks and speaks to our future. District core value number 1 states every student is uniquely capable and deserves to be challenged and engaged in relevant, rigorous, and meaningful learning each day. For the month of October, we have the opportunity to celebrate all uniquely capable students in our district, schools, and classrooms. In consideration of the current demands on teachers and our returning students, Special Education Services is providing access to focused activities and opportunities. These activities share the unique abilities of public celebrities, provide lessons for students of all abilities, and promote the use of social media to spotlight the achievements of individual students, classrooms, and teachers. This link leads to information and additional activities that include quotes, book lists, and school projects provided directly to teachers in early October. And we have been the happy recipients of pictures, videos, and tweets representing district-wide engagement. As October moves forward and we are gathering responses for the 2021 Disability History and Awareness Month, we thought you would enjoy a brief video highlighting some of the previous year's celebrations. Due to technical issues, this link will be shared with you through email. I know, I hate we can't watch it tonight. So we want to thank you for allowing us a few moments to focus on the distinctive abilities of all students and to specifically celebrate the successes of our district students and to be more aware and to celebrate the uniqueness of the students that we in Special Education Services are honored to serve. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the recognition.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, Superintendent update. Superintendent Moore.
Thank you, Chair Sutton. I'll provide a brief update of the items that we covered in our work session today. The first item that we covered was an update on the COVID testing contract with MACO. We outlined the phase 1, 2, and 3 works of the voluntary testing, COVID testing program in our schools. MACO has informed us that they should be able to begin that early in November, and that'll be after the board approves the MOU. This is voluntary testing that we will start with schools with either active or potential clusters and voluntary testing for central services staff. By the end of November, moving on, we should be able to expand that to options for voluntary testing open to all schools. This is testing for staff and students. As a reminder, all student testing does require parental permission. And that all of that is a runway building to what will be phase 3 for the staff anyway, for the implementation of the Biden mandate through OSHA, where we anticipate that all staff will either need to provide proof of vaccination or regular testing. And so that we're starting with the voluntary testing program with schools with active or potential clusters first, and then building towards the Biden mandate requirements. The second item that we discussed in work session was the year-round continuation, the year-round schools discussion, and there was a hearty discussion as we looked through scenarios about all of the challenges of our year-round programming over the years, about its place in terms of how we, the role of year-round in capacity and parental choice and needs, under-enrolled schools, overutilized schools, and how we can be strategic in making decisions, looking forward. In particular, I think, as Dr. Martin often states, to ensure that our calendar the choice has a purpose in terms of how it supports the district objectives. We will continue that discussion. That is not over over because there is still work to be done to establish what our priorities are and then the mechanisms that we will use, including how we gather feedback from our school leaders, our communities, as a part of this decision-making process moving forward. And those are the two items that we covered in work session. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore. That takes us to public comment. Consistent with the August 18th, 2021 declaration by the town of Cary requiring face coverings in all indoor settings, properly worn face coverings are now required for those attending Board of Education meetings to limit the spread of COVID-19. In keeping with the town's declaration, a face covering must be secured to the head with ties, straps, or loops over the ears and fit snugly against the side of a person's face. Board members, WCPSS employees, and the public must wear a face covering even if vaccinated. A properly worn face covering means the nose, mouth, and chin are covered. If you're unable to wear a face covering because of a disability, you may watch the live stream of board meetings or listen by phone. If you are selected to give public comment and are unable to wear a face covering due to a disability or other reason, please let us know when completing the registration form. Only those indicating a disability on the registration form will be permitted to remove their face coverings during public comment. If you are unable to wear a face covering, you will be asked to wait outside the building until you are contacted prior to your speaking time. After you are contacted, you will be allowed to enter the meeting room to give public comment. Then you will be asked to leave if you do not properly wear a face covering during the meeting. Public comment is accepted in writing, via video, in person, during regular meetings of the full board. During the public comment session, you may speak for up to 3 minutes. You will see a yellow light at the podium when you have 30 seconds remaining, then a red light when your time is up. If the public comment portion of the agenda exceeds 30 minutes, the board chair reserves the right to conduct other board business before inviting remaining speakers to the podium. The following citizens have submitted comments as part of our public comment portion of this evening's agenda. Their comments are linked on the same online agenda we're using for tonight's meeting. That agenda, as well as guidelines for those wishing to submit comments for future meetings, can be found at the district's website, which is wcpss.net, under the tab labeled School Board. We have 44 written comments and 7 video comments from members of the public. The topics and speakers whose comments are attached to the agenda are as follows. There are 25 speakers regarding COVID preventative measures, including mask mandate. These include both in support of and opposition to. In addition, there are 7 speakers that wish to speak regarding bus drivers, 4 speakers regarding Spanish instruction, 4 speakers or comments regarding the reassignment concerning Abbott's Creek, and then there are 11 others on a variety of topics and miscellaneous topics. With respect to those that are here with us tonight in person providing comment, we'll start with those. First up is Russell Lichtenstein, sorry, sir.
So you said masks on, right?
Yes,
During
sir.
speaking? Okay. All right. I'm here tonight to talk about masks and vaccinations. I am unaware of any peer-reviewed study that shows any significant mitigation of COVID-19 via mask, and I would ask that this information be provided to us as justification for the continued mandate. There's been much discussion as well about vaccine mandates for our children. We are asked to accept liability for this vaccine and its unforeseen side effects and consequences. Will the school board or NCDHHS be responsible if this mandate is enacted and, God forbid, something happens to my children down the road? We are being asked to accept all risk from an experimental vaccine for a disease that is essentially zero risk of death for kids. This is simply unacceptable to me. Dr. Martin has stated that COVID is one of many sicknesses that isn't deadly. We do know, however, that the vaccine is deadly via the VAERS website. How many life-altering side effects or death is this board willing to take responsibility for? This pandemic, by any metric, is not an emergency for children, and any sort of mandate is unjustifiable. My son has natural immunity and should not be subjected to either a mask mandate or a vaccine mandate or this testing regimen that you all spoke of. A one-size-fits-all approach is un-American. There are all sorts of accommodations made at school for children to fit their specific needs. Why should my son be any different? That would be discriminatory. I want to tell you a little anecdote about my son's football game. He plays at Holly Springs, Holly Ridge. He's an 8th grader. He was playing against Apex Middle. He's a lineman. He told me after the game that the kid he lined up against each game was wearing a mask the entire game. He sees it dripping with sweat, with water, dirt, grass all over it the entire game. I don't know who's directing that, if it's his parents, his coach. After the game, when they do the lineup and say congratulations or good game, he said the majority of the kids are wearing masks on that one team. His team is not. Again, I don't know who's directing that. To me, that's just overkill, or it's just unnecessary and frankly a little scary to me. Those kids should not be doing that, especially after hustling in a game. It's just unnecessary. Finally, when I think about the disease and all of the measures we as a society have implemented, and I look back, very few have been justified. From the lockdowns and the disastrous effects on our economy, school closures, and the continued deleterious effects on our children and their education, the maskings and the developmental and physical toll, the initial vaccine efficacy and protection promises to today's reality that the vaccines not only don't protect us from contracting or spreading the disease, but we can also still die after receiving 2 doses. All of this is to say I want to be able to choose what is best for my kids. I do not want anyone else choosing, not you all, not the health department, not our federal government. I think their track record speaks for themselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Tracy Taylor.
If you guys can't see that, I'm happy to give you a copy of it. I can email it to you, okay? Good evening. My name is Dr. Tracy Taylor, and I appreciate your time today to discuss North Carolina's constitutional duty to provide every child access to a sound basic education. I've been speaking at Board of Education meetings since you allowed parents to attend again. Early this year, I presented data that schools were safe to open prior to when you allowed us to come. I presented the data and stated that my recommendations have been firmly rooted in the evidence. Evidence has never supported masking in schools, and it does not support your current testing recommendations and quarantine protocols. Sorry, I feel like I'm going to pass out. Okay. You are all proposing the implementation of a program to perform screening testing on students using a test that is already too sensitive, regardless of symptom status. Why would we be testing and screening perfectly healthy children who are symptom-free? If a child tests positive and has no symptoms, they're sent home and have to quarantine for 10 days. We've seen this occur already, even if the student never develops symptoms throughout their quarantine. The optional testing will lead to unnecessary quarantining of students, which will lead to decreased classroom instruction hours and days. Unfortunately, Wake County is not telling the general public how many students test positive out of those who are being quarantined. Thankfully, other school districts in North Carolina are keeping very good data on the number of students forced to quarantine as well as the number of those who test positive. Union County is a mask optional district, and their incidence rate, the percent positivity, compared to Wake County is what you see here. The bottom line is that there is absolutely no statistically significant difference between their county and ours. None. Between Union County and Lincoln County, they've demonstrated that anywhere from less than 2% to 10% of students who are forced to quarantine actually test positive. Conversely, this means that 90 to 98% of students who are forced to quarantine do not have COVID. Let me repeat. 90 to 98% of those students who are forced to quarantine do not have COVID. If we extrapolate this to Wake County, last week 300 students were excluded from school for 7 days if they chose to get tested. This is equivalent to 2,100 person hours for 1 day, 14,000 person hours for 7 days. Recently, a Board of Education member said that Union County would be on the wrong side of history, and I do not want to be with them. It appears that Union County has done everything right. Since last year, they opened schools, they're mask optional now, and there's no statistically significant difference with their COVID incidents. They're also the #1 performing school district in North Carolina. I strongly recommend that you do not perform COVID testing in schools, and please ask Wake County Health Department to change their COVID quarantine policy. Thank you.
Clayton Dillard.
Good evening. So I'm here to talk about a few things, but most of all, the lack of transparency with the school board when it comes to making decisions and developing and enforcing policies that are negatively impacting our children. I have to start off a little bit, though, and kind of along that line and talk about FUD, FUD. This doctor likes to spread FUD. Maybe he should be called Dr. FUD, because the numbers that are pointed out are all slanted towards how many kids might be sick or how many kids, or people are going to the hospital. The real number that matters is how many kids are dying. And I think that number is 0 in Wake County. I don't think any kids have died in Wake County, at least in the past year and a half. And speaking of that, I've got the VAERS database website open right now. There's something wrong with these vaccines that are being given to adults and now children, and now you guys and others want to force them on our kids. Up until 2020, the size of the VAERS database maxed out at 42.23 megabytes. Now it's 508.89 megabytes. That just represents about a 10x increase in the amount of data in the VAERS database, which is the database where people report negative side effects to the virus. You can look that up on the VAERS website. I and many other parents have been coming here for weeks and months, and we're asking questions and raising concerns to you about what's happening in our schools. And instead of taking the opportunity to engage us in an open dialogue and collaborate with us as the parents of the students who are affected by these policies that you're implementing, you put up walls. And you tell us to go talk to the ABC Science Collaborative or to the health department. The tactics that you're using really amount to stonewalling. And we have genuine concerns about these policies and their effects on our children. What we want is for this board to comply with our demands for parental choice and informed consent concerning masks on our kids in school, as well as any testing for COVID or any medical treatments for COVID, such as the experimental vaccines that are being proposed today. There's a lot of studies that talk about the effectiveness or the ineffectiveness of masks. And I mean, we can debate that, but the bottom line is we deserve choice and our kids deserve choice. I would say, I've got a few questions here. When are you going to begin engaging parents in a two-way dialogue about these issues and our concerns? Why don't you hold an open forum each month and give parents who elected you the courtesy of answering our questions face to face? What's going on behind closed doors between this board and the ABC Science Collaborative? And then parents, how much longer are we going to allow this board to continue to abuse our children?
Ashley Seshel. Ashley Seshel.
Good evening. I come to you tonight to speak again about the draconian toolkit that is quarantining too many healthy children. I realize most of you do not want to question the toolkit, but it is a fact that it tries to punish mask optional districts and unvaccinated children. Thank goodness for counties such as Union, Lincoln, Harnett, Cabarrus, and Pender, who have decided to be successful without forcing masks and vaccines. They all have fewer vaccination rates than Wake, and they are still seeing a similar decline in positivity rates. Unfortunately, this board is so focused on vaccines testing and being healthcare facilities, it seems you are abandoning your primary role, education. The majority of kids you send home are healthy and they are being quarantined and denied in-person instruction. Who's going to take responsibility for another lackluster year of academic performance? Parents, did you know last year in North Carolina, only 45% of K through 8 students were at grade level performance in reading? Only 25 to 30% of African American and Hispanic children passed reading and math, and 70% of economically disadvantaged kids were not proficient at the end of last year. The toolkit also punishes the unvaccinated, and it will mostly punish the minority community. You know why? Because they are the least vaccinated group. Will that help our academic performance? Speaking of performance, when will the board be sharing Wake County scores? Also, the board seems to think that mask and the jab are the only treatment options. Does anyone know what natural immunity means? If low vaccinated and non-mask counties are seeing similar declines to Wake, do you think your strategy is working? No. Well, yeah, you do, but in addition, the answer is to test more and more kids. For what? To catch more asymptomatic kids and quarantine more healthy children? This toolkit with its contact tracing and quarantine policy is a joke. The school system is short-staffed of nurses and teachers who are already overwhelmed, and the answer is to make it harder on staff by bringing in testing to an already messed up system? What's the logic? It is hypocritical to claim no responsibility, as you are just taking advice from the experts at the Health Department and the ABC Collaborative, and then turn around and have no problem forcing school staff to make medical decisions for these children, and they have no healthcare expertise or statutory authority. These children have rights. Parents, you also have the right to question these ridiculous policies that have never been confirmed by mandate or statute. It is time to start standing up against bureaucrats who are using our children as political pawns. Tell the schools to get out of healthcare business and back to educating our children. Thank you.
Katie Long. Katie Long. Did I say what?
What name did you say?
Katie Long.
I actually have a message for the audience. A child I know who no longer attends a Wake County school is now attending a school where children come first and masks are optional. This child is 8 years old, a third grader. His dad picked him up and inquired about his first day. The son's response: "The best part about the new school was that the kids there are way more social towards me." Let this child's response resonate with you. Don't you want your child to attend school not being muzzled? Half of our children's faces are gone. Moms, you and I did not give birth to our children with just half a face. When that child arrived into this world, that baby was scared because of the unknowns. The baby is able to express their feelings by crying, smile when they're happy, make facial expressions when they want to be funny. Now, all you can see on your children's face is just a big fat diaper and their two eyes. This mask mandate, a mandate which is not a law, by the way, is one step closer to the so-called vaccine. I bet many in this room and who are listening at the nutrition facts when you buy an item for consumption because you want to know what the ingredients are before you put it in your body. Why wouldn't you want to know what's in that vaccine? We teach our children never take food from strangers because we don't know where it came from or what's in it. Why wouldn't you apply the same logic to the so-called vaccine? We have a 99% survival rate against COVID. What we really need to truly be fearful of is the mask that the schools insist our children wear. That decreases the amount of oxygen in their lung tissue. The virus uses something called furin cleavage site to merge with your lung tissue to infect you. You can fact check this on pubmed.gov. It can become more infectious with decreased oxygen. Peer-reviewed research clearly shows that wearing a mask increases the chances of developing an upper respiratory infection 13 times more than a person not wearing a mask. We are in an information war. We have been misinformed and lied to. This is not about our health, but it's rather a political agenda. JFK once said, "Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country." Everyone in this room and who is watching or listening has a moral obligation to empower themselves with knowledge and truth. Don't just take people's words for it. Do your own research and listen to alternative news. And please, don't ridicule others for speaking truth. We should come together as a community and leave communism out of this beautiful country and the entire world. Free the smiles, free Chad Stahl. Love is the greatest force of victory.
Renee Seckel.
750,000 people dead. 700, well, I think it's actually closer to 700. Let's be accurate about this. 700,000 people dead. And we're sitting here talking about whether our children should be asked to wear a mask for their own safety and the safety of those around them. I appreciate this school board for voting consistently, most of you, to allow our children the safety to come to school in person every day, to enjoy their peers and their teachers, and experience school as close to as it was meant to be as possible. I ask you to keep going. I ask you to keep doing more. Vaccines are still a ways off for our kids, and we need you guys to keep being proactive. As Dr. Martin pointed out, our case rates aren't going down real fast, and they need to be. So yes, please keep masking. I've asked for filters for our classrooms, certainly at least in the oldest schools where we're not entirely certain we can trust those HVAC systems. And I would ask you to please accelerate the testing plan. I appreciate that it's putting into place, but next month is not as good as this month. So please accelerate your plans for testing. And finally, I would ask that you impose a vaccine mandate not just for staff, but for any adult volunteers in the schools who are interacting with children. There is no excuse to be in the school putting children at risk if you don't have to be. Thank you very much.
Wendy Fuller Runyon.
I'm not here to give you data, and I'm not here to give you statistics. You know them. I'm here to tell you my personal story of how my two children are being discriminated against in the school system. Last Tuesday, my 15-year-old honor student and football player at Millbrook High School, one who wears a mask every day, by the way, sent me a text that he had a mild headache. Two of his friends had nasal congestion, and he was worried they would infect their teammates. So the two other mothers and I decided to have our children COVID tested. Theirs came back negative. My son, symptom-free, came back positive. I did not believe my son had COVID because he did not have a single symptom after the mild headache for 45 minutes, which went away on its own. So I took him to a doctor who tested me, my son, and my other son, who's also in quarantine until November 1st, symptom-free. And we have had 4 negative tests, a negative antibodies test, and a doctor has diagnosed my son as never having COVID and gave him a note to go back to school last Friday. Because I could not get anyone from the school system or the health department to call me back, I did not send him back to school Friday. I finally received a phone call today from a doctor at the health department that stated, and I quote, "It is up to your principal when she lets your child come back to school. But it is quite possible she doesn't know this information." How embarrassing that a principal would not know when a child is allowed to come back to school. My son's mental health has been affected. He's missed 2 football games. His grades have plummeted. I remind you, he's an honor student. He now has a 55 in anatomy because the teacher's putting in zeros for missed work. Who's going to pay these doctor's bills when we have to seek out a psychiatrist for my child? We're a tax-paying family. My children are entitled to an education, and they're not getting it, and it's for no reason. There's no communication between the Department of Health and the school system. The amount of incompetence that I have uncovered throughout this last week is appalling. There's a breakdown in communication, and because of that, our children are suffering. My children are not sick, and they have not been sick, and they need to be in school. This is embarrassing, and this is shameful. Every step of the way, our families tried to be proactive and do the right thing, and now my children are being punished for it. Next time, I doubt we'll be so proactive.
Becky Lou Hobbs.
I grew up in the Wake County public school system. My kids are now part of the public school system. Recently, the actions and the policies from the school board have created a harmful environment for them, though. The first one is masking. The school board mandates that all students and staff must wear masks. Yet both students and adults are going to concerts, football games, and other events, all without a mask. It just doesn't make sense. My elementary-age daughter tells me she can have a mask break when they eat lunch or they go outside to play. For a 7-hour day, that's hardly any time to breathe freely. She's expressed she's afraid to tell her teacher when she's having a hard time breathing. How many other kids are afraid to tell their teachers too? Whether or not they should, it's not the point. We as adults, we've created an atmosphere that they're afraid to speak up, and that's not fair to our children. And then there are the health issues that potential masking can cause. We all know what Colgate is. Many of us use their products. Colgate's website details something called mask mouth. It's where Colgate states that wearing a mask for an extended period of time creates unwanted side effects, including dry mouth, bad breath, tooth decay, gum disease, disrupts breathing, and leads to dehydration. And of course, all of that has negative health effects. And my daughter has experienced that. $400 in dental bills because of tooth decay. The second is the lack of policies regarding the treatments of students with so-called COVID symptoms. This has resulted in denying a lot of children their education, including mine. My daughter said to her teacher, "The class is loud. It's giving me a headache." They sent her home with COVID symptoms. The school would not allow her on campus, offered her no educational support, denied her her right to an education for 5 days. Furthermore, I've been provided no details by the school. How was she removed from class? Was she put in a room by herself? Was she put in a room with other sick children? Was she marked absent when she was denied access? I don't know. The school won't tell me. This practice is just a major concern with our teens, too. Last year, they were denied access to their education for a month. How many times would they be denied this year? We couldn't take it anymore. We had to pull them from school and go to other means. Where are the guidelines that the schools follow? Why are healthy kids being quarantined? The school board's COVID practices administered without wisdom, discernment, or even just basic guidelines for the schools to follow. It's resulted in a practice of denying thousands of students access to public education that they are legally entitled to. Stop this now. Adults need to be an example. They need to demonstrate the use of thought and wisdom, not blind obedience. Let our kids breathe. Stop quarantining healthy kids, and stop denying kids an education. Thank you.
Jessica Lewis.
Tonight, I would like to address the school quarantine policies. My main question is, why are so many healthy children being quarantined? There are so many reasons kids are being sent home, such as headache, runny nose, stomachache. My kids were out of school for 3 weeks last year because my son had a runny nose due to allergies, and my daughter had a COVID exposure. They both had zero COVID symptoms and negative tests, and were still told they could not come back. This year already, my daughter has been sent home twice from school. The first time was trouble breathing, and the second one was a one-time vomiting incident. She was quarantined with no alternative to learning education, and she once again had to go get tested to prove she was healthy. In addition to children, has the board considered the burdens on parents? Many families have both parents working. They risk losing their job because their children are out for weeks at a time, and their kids are perfectly healthy. Children are going to the state fair, football games, restaurants, where it's crowded. They are shoulder to shoulder, and everyone is maskless. Parents question why their kids do not have the same opportunity to choose whether their child wears a mask in school. Quarantining and contact tracing is the sole responsibility of the health department, not the school administrators. If a child is sent home, why are parents responsible for contacting the health department to beg for their healthy child to return to school? It seems that it should be the other way around. The health director should have to prove that the healthy child is an imminent threat. Now the school board thinks that testing in schools is an exit strategy. The contact tracing and quarantine process is already in a mess with communication between the school and health department. The solution is to add more workloads to an already broken system. Why is the school board more focused on turning schools into healthcare facilities instead of education? Testing in schools will most likely find more asymptomatic cases and will result in more quarantines. Does anyone on this board think these solutions are going to improve the already poor education and test scores from last year? Also, who is going to be liable with this testing in the schools? Who is going to be held accountable for the continued decline in learning, especially the healthy kids that are being denied an education? These are just a few issues every day within our public school system. This illness is not going away, and we must learn to live with it. Runny nose, stomach bugs, congestion, and headaches are child symptoms that have been in our schools forever, and there has never been a concern until now. Everything in life cannot be due to COVID. Mask mandates, vaccines, and constant testing may not be the solution. We as parents want to know an exit plan to keeping healthy kids from being quarantined. Our children cannot afford any more learning loss. They are already behind. Also, please consider the burden on working parents who cannot afford to lose weeks of work. I ask you to question this toolkit and the negative impacts it has on children and parents. Thank you.
Cassandra Cloninger.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm coming before you tonight as a concerned parent. I have 2 children currently enrolled in the WCPSS school system and have 2 that have graduated. My concern lies around many things. However, as I'm limited in time, I will be focusing on the most pressing issue I'm experiencing as a parent, the safety of our children. My 10th grader attends Roosevelt High School. 2 weeks ago, I sat here and listened as you all sang the praises of Deidre Lassiter, their principal. I agree, she is a wonderful leader, and I am grateful to have her as a principal. Despite the fact that Deidre is arguably one of our best in this district, my son comes home almost every day with stories and oftentimes videos that are circulating amongst the students of fights breaking out at school. One of his good friends, who I lovingly refer to as my weekend child, was beat up last week for no reason, and despite the fact that he did not throw a single punch, was served in school suspension. Last week, they had a code red lockdown that lasted the entire day with very little communication to the parents as to what the threat actually was. To this day, I still have no idea what this threat entailed. Was it an email threat? Was it a gunman on campus? So many rumors, but I have 0 facts. That in and of itself is unacceptable. That as a parent, I am kept in the dark even after the threat is over. It's also unacceptable that several children in my son's class had to urinate in a utility sink in a closet, as they were not even allowed to go use the restroom. Meanwhile, students taking the PSATs had 0 idea that there was a code red lockdown and were wandering the hallways and able to use the restroom freely. So please tell me, how serious was this threat? As a parent, I have a right to know. I say all of this to show that our children are under an unprecedented amount of stress. The rise in fights and now lockdowns and even suicides are proof that our children are breaking under this pressure. There have been 4 suicides on North Carolina college campuses in the last week. I am begging you, please put an end to these abusive and draconian mask mandates and quarantine policies before we lose any more young lives. Are any of you here parents? I trust that many of you are. And if you're not, I trust that at one point you had a passion for education and for our children. I want you to take a moment this evening, perhaps not now, but as you unwind tonight, and have time to take a deep breath and stop and think about how stressful it was for all of us to be a child, particularly a teen. And then I want you to think about how much more stressful it would have been had we had the social media pressure and technology that our children are now faced with navigating. And then I want you to add a global pandemic to that. And please remember that as a child, you do not have the same decision-making abilities or freedoms that we as adults have. As a child, you can't just tell your teacher that you will not wear a mask or that your stomachache is really just anxiety and not COVID. No one will listen to you because you're a child and subject to the rules that the adults put on you. I want you to think about how crushing these mandates are, how devastating to your education and social well-being it is to be quarantined when you are perfectly healthy. Take a deep breath tonight and reflect on what we are asking of our children. And ask yourself, is this necessary? I can sit here and spew numbers and cite studies, but to what end? You've been provided with this information time and time again, and you choose to continue to go against the actual data and science and follow the narrative of fear. So instead, I will ask you to reflect on what impact your decisions are truly having on our children and their mental health. Finally, I would like to know what your exit strategy is. Who is making these decisions? And what is the plan to give back our children's education that they are entitled to? How many more lives must we lose to suicide? And how much more damage must we witness here before you implement a better strategy? Thank you for your time.
Elizabeth Horn.
Okay. I have been a substitute in Wake County schools for several years now. And I don't know who on the board or why the board decided to decrease the substitute pay. It used to be $91 a day. Now it's $80 a day. In addition, you make all the substitutes take an effective teacher training class, which I think everyone should take. $80 a day is about $10 an hour. And you say, well, it's only 7.5 hours. That's still, in today's economy, with the rate, with COVID-19, with the fear that you've put in the teachers, the students, and the staff. Before I stood up today, I checked. There's 170 vacancies. 170 vacancies. I don't work at all schools. I just choose the few that are closest to me. There's like 12. You have a crisis in your school system. I chose to substitute teach because I really care about the kids. Kids are number one. Parents, you are number two. Teachers are number three. I'm sorry, board, but I care about you. I know that you got a bad job and it's really tough, and I understand your dilemma. But parents need to have the right to choose for their kids. I did substitute during COVID-19 because I read about my immunity. As a teacher in Wake County schools, teachers have a strong immunity, most of them. Unless you're diabetic, you're overweight, you have other health issues. Teachers, we get exposed to everything. Our immunity is strong because the more that we're exposed to, and Dr. Martin, you should know this, when your body is exposed to illnesses, your immune system gets stronger. Children have developing immune systems. Their immune system with each exposure gets stronger and stronger. The mask, if your child has a dependency on wearing the mask, it's like a binky. It's a security system. You're going to have a hard time getting these parents to send their children in without mask. There's a lot of children, just like the parents in this room, there's a lot of children that do not want to wear the mask. It's a problem. Being a substitute teacher in the classroom, it's divisive, even within the classroom. So for me, the pay, I decided, y'all are making it like really scary to even go into the classroom. So I found another job. But I do want to tell you, because a parent asked me to bring up the suicide rate. The CDC said today the emergency department visits for children between the age of 5 and 11 years rose by 24% this year, and some 31% for ages 12 to 17. Suspected suicide attempts among girls 12 to 17 saw more than a 50% increase this year compared to the same period last year. The masks are causing a social dilemma. You have to unmask the kids. Let the parents have a choice. And let them work with the teachers for classroom
management. Thank you, Mrs. Horn. Your time is up.
Okay.
Joyce Rosenfeld. Joyce Rosenfield.
Good evening, Superintendent Moore, Chair Sutton, and board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I have a few concerns I'd like to share with you. Ever since COVID began, I've been particularly concerned for my son. The current situation with the way safety is handled has left me with a constant worry about my son's safety. My son worries too. School should be the one place that he doesn't have to worry about his safety and well-being. We are in a pandemic. Yes, these are not normal times, but that doesn't mean that safety shouldn't be a priority. First and foremost, at his school and all Wake County schools. The mask mandate must continue. To do otherwise would mean to say that you don't care about his life, my life, the rest of my family, his friends, teachers and staff. Masks are about safety, not politics. Although I know you've heard this before, but I feel that it needs to be said again. Masks help prevent the spread of COVID-19. They help keep children and others from ending up on a ventilator and dying. Even losing one child from this virus is one too many. I ask that you put the interests of not only my child, but all students, teachers, and staff. Our children have been affected enough by this pandemic. I ask that you use all strategies available to ensure that they not have to also suffer the loss of a student, teacher, or staff member due to COVID. We shouldn't have to worry every month if the mask mandate is going to continue or not. Unfortunately, we're dealing with the Delta variant, a much more contagious, more deadly, and aggressive virus. In addition, I ask that you accelerate the implementation of testing at schools when warranted and as necessary. It's yet another important and crucial safety measure that helps prevent the spread of COVID-19. Is it unpleasant? Yes. Is it necessary? At this time, 100%. We all want our schools to be safe, and we all want to avoid another shutdown. The testing will avoid having a major spread or cluster in our schools. The testing is already paid for, so there's really no excuse not to move forward with it. Of course, a parent can opt out and test on his or her own. I have a final ask, and that is that you move forward without hesitation, without excuses, to allow and enable air purifiers in all our classrooms, and to allow and enable outdoor lunches when weather permits. Cost isn't a factor, as all of these expenses have already been covered by the COVID-19 federal relief funds. Staffing isn't an issue either. Plenty of parents, including myself, are willing to volunteer to keep all of our children safe. Thank you again for taking the time to listen, to understand, to empathize and relate, and to act in the best interest of all children, their families, teachers, and staff.
Time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sherry Porto.
Good evening, Chair Sutton, board members, and Superintendent Moore. I would like to thank you all for continuing to put safety over politics and science over rhetoric by supporting a mask mandate in our schools. Thank you for doing what was needed to keep our schools open safely. After all, that is the ultimate goal. It's unfortunate how ugly and heated this topic has become, and I'm sorry that you're being put in this position monthly. I want to urge you all to continue to support a mask mandate in Wake County schools. It is our most effective strategy to prevent the spread of the virus in schools. On September 24th, the CDC released 3 studies in the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report that highlighted the importance of universal masking to stop the spread of COVID and minimize disruptions for safe in-person learning. These studies found that school districts without a universal masking policy were more likely to have COVID outbreaks. When we prevent these outbreaks, we are not only keeping kids safe from this virus, but we are preventing unnecessary disruptions to their education. Kids in quarantine are not learning, as well as kids who remain in person every day. The ABC Science Collaborative also continues to recommend masking in schools for both vaccinated and unvaccinated staff and students as the best mitigation strategy to prevent secondary spread of COVID. Look at how well Wake County schools are doing with a mandate in place. I know there's pressure from the opposition, but I am asking you to please continue to follow the science and the data. Masking allows us to keep our schools open and to avoid widespread quarantines and the need to return to remote learning. The social and emotional benefits of being in person have been immeasurable for my children. Please let us keep our eye on the goal and do what is necessary to keep our schools open safely and maintain the universal mask mandate. Thank you.
Kristen Beller.
Good evening, Superintendent Moore, Chair Sutton, and board members. My name is Kristen Beller, and I'm the president of Wake CAE, the professional organization representing all certified and non-certified public school employees in Wake County. Currently, we have vacancies in critical positions, and the responsibility for filling them weigh on this board, but the impact is felt by educators navigating challenges caused by them every day. It's important to listen to the folks who've not left. What do they need? What makes them feel trusted and respected as a professional? What are they doing that is the best use of their time in preparing for and responding to student learning? During what part of their day do they feel most valued? When we asked our fellow educators these questions over and over again, folks shared that they feel most valued when they're with students, teaching or supporting them. We love working with our students, supporting them in their learning, driving them to and from school, making nutrition-filled meals, teaching them to ask questions and listen for the answers, helping them navigate maps and math, reading and writing, foreign languages, body movement, and team sports. We create classroom communities that support learning and grow our students academically, socially, and emotionally. Most of us in this room and at home have a vision in our minds of what our classrooms should look like, feel like, sound like. And when educators have all barriers eliminated, that shared vision becomes a child's reality and our whole community benefits. This year, the barriers are plenty as the impact of the pandemic continues to bear down on our school staff, trying to protect our students from tarnishing any of that shared vision of what we all want our school experiences to be like. Educators in every role are teaching and supporting students without social distancing, testing, or adequate contact tracing during the second year of a pandemic, even through the Delta surge, because we want to keep our students in in-person learning conditions. But those conditions have meant that educators are taking greater risks and responsibility for student and staff safety than ever before. Educators working in person with students should be compensated for that risk with hazard pay. Certified staff are covering classes during planning periods. Instructional assistants and other non-certified staff are teaching in classrooms when a teacher is out, and there's no substitute to fill the absence. Bus drivers are driving extra routes and doing double backs to make sure that all students arrive to and from school safely, despite having less drivers on the road. School staff are coming to school early and staying late to supervise students during extended bus duty due to the shortage of drivers. When educators said that they feel most valued when they're working with the students, it's important to add the but. But that experience can only feel that way and be that great for students and staff when they have time to prepare for it. The staff who are covering classes and routes, stretching themselves to do more, learn new roles or content, and take on unsustainable extra duties that interrupt their own personal needs and lives. The staff who are doing all of that because they care about the experience students have should be well compensated for that extra work. You might not be able to wave a wand and immediately fill the vacancies, but you certainly can choose to compensate them for their time and labor. Thank you.
Cecilia Joyce.
Hi, good evening, Board and Superintendent Moore. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm Cecilia Joyce. I'm a middle school AIG teacher here in Wake County and also a proud Enloe Eagle parent with a senior again. I'd like to begin by expressing my immense gratitude for the continued mask requirement in schools and all the Wake County public school sites. The highly contagious nature of the Delta variant means that we must stay vigilant and keep our students, ourselves, and our families safe. I also appreciate your resolution in support of the Leandro ruling, and I hope to see movement there from our North Carolina General Assembly. While this school year has been like no other, we are really glad to be in school doing what we do best. Students and educators have shown a tremendous amount of resilience and perseverance in the face of all the challenges thrown our way. The majority of our students have no problems wearing their masks properly and go about a fairly normal school day. Their core classes, electives, club meetings, performances after school. Some have the opportunity to eat lunch outside. Some classes are outside at times too. And in most ways, our school year has been back to a new normal, in which there's a lot of meaningful learning happening, but also some added stress because of the pandemic. There is a staffing shortage that leaves very few substitute teachers available for work. While my school site is fully staffed, many are not. We do have staff who are absent at times due to many factors, and we are called on to cover classes for each other when no sub picks up the job. We are team players. We do this without animosity towards each other, but we deserve compensation for working as a substitute during our planning time or for covering a bus route. The work during our planning time, such as planning, grading, SPED, AIG, intervention paperwork, collaboration with other teachers, if we're unable to do these tasks during planning, it has to happen on our own time at home with our families. And like everyone during this challenging time, we need that downtime for our own social and emotional well-being now more than ever. As a means of retaining the amazing, hardworking staff who are working with students without social distancing, many unvaccinated, with problematic contact tracing, we deserve hazard pay. Our IAs deserve at least $15 an hour and sub pay when they act as subs. It is an honor to work with students, and our time and labor should be honored as professionals. The federal COVID funds would be put to great use towards this. Thank you, school board and superintendent and staff for your time and efforts in compensating Wake County Public School staff fairly during these difficult times. Thank you.
Michelle Thompson.
I have never spoken at a board meeting for the education, and public speaking is not something that comes easily for me. However, I am teaching my son that when you believe strongly in something, you should make sure that your voice is heard. I want to thank the board for promoting masking in schools and allowing my child to feel safe as he goes about his day. I am here to ask the board to continue to take action to ensure the safety of our kids while they're in school. I'm fortunate. My school has been able to raise funds to have outdoor seating for children. The PTA purchased that seating. The parents have purchased air filters for their children to be in school. I'm asking the board to be sure that every student has the availability of these protections that are being provided at my school, at my child's school. We need testing, and I'm glad to hear that the board has implemented a testing program. I ask that you would accelerate that and continue to push towards testing for all people. I look forward to the day when masking is not required, but we're not there yet. I would like to know from the board, what are the measurements that will be taken? What are the steps that will be taken to determine when that is able to go away? I have a second grader at school. He has never experienced a year at school without COVID stress. He's never had a full year of learning in school in an environment that he feels comfortable at. I'm asking the board to do everything you can do to ensure that he continues to be in person at school and learning. Remote learning didn't work for us. My mother had to do his learning with him at school. My kindergartner was not savvy enough to do a lot of the electronic things that were being asked of him. There were many days he would call me in tears, "Mom, I can't get into school today." I would email the teacher, "I'm sorry, I'm at work. I can't help him log into school. I'm sorry he won't attend today." Please don't let that happen again to our students. Please do everything in your power to ensure that they stay in school and that they stay safe. Thank you for your time and letting me speak and being an example to my son
Thank you, Ms. Thompson.
of the things that you can do when you feel strongly about something.
Holly Wiltshire.
Good evening, Dr. Holly Higgins-Wiltshire. I'm grateful to be here with you again this evening. It's affirming to know that we all stand here with a shared goal of healthy and safe and happy children. This evening, I want to talk to you about two things: a child's emotional safety and resilience. Emotionally safety. We've heard resoundingly in this public forum about how we want to keep children healthy and safe. I think we can all agree on this goal. At the same time, the current experimental virus mitigation measures are threatening our children's emotional safety. I cannot reiterate enough how much emotional safety is an important part of their overall health and well-being. While missing signs of seizures, strokes, and nosebleeds are, of course, aspects of physical safety that are missed with children's faces covered, emotional safety also impacts their physical wellness. An environment void of facial connections for children is an emotionally unsafe environment. Did you know that research shows that we have a psychosomatic relationship with health and that emotional health is a huge impact of physical health? A young child's emotional safety is threatened with not being able to see the faces of their peers and teachers. How our brains and bodies process what we're experiencing emotionally is a large determinant of our physical health. For example, when a child sees an adult smile, this is a neurophysiological event. It makes their bodies physically healthy and keeps them psychologically safe. When we institute policy, practice, and law that is in synchrony with the biology of a child's development and well-being, we see remarkable things happen with their health and development. When we institute policy, practice, and mandates that are out of synchrony with a child's biological development, we have a mental health crisis on our hands. Resilience. A very alarming statement I've heard thrown out over the last 18 months is, oh, it's just a mask. Children are naturally resilient. They'll be fine. Did you know that resilience research began 6 decades ago with a small group of psychologists who were studying children facing significant adversity and following their trajectories of health, mental illness, and pathology? These researchers studied a group of children in Hawaii and tracked them over time. The phenomenon of resilience, doing well in spite of adversity, actually arose as an anomaly from this group, a small group of children doing well in spite of high-risk factors. What those researchers learned was that it was the protective factors in their lives that determined if a child would do well despite adversity. What resilience research agree on is the phenomenon of resilience occurs with the presence of the right internal and external child protective factors. What resilience research does not tell us is that children are naturally resilient or born resilient. In fact, failure to thrive in infancy shows us this. Rather, children are born with the capacity and potential to be resilient. Being in a relationally healthy environment is one of the greatest protective factors to build resilience. It is important because for children who don't have a lot of protective factors in their lives, it's not just a mask. For a child who's already experiencing a lot of trauma, it's not just a mask. Please consider these special considerations for children and consider giving parents the choice to send their children to school with masks. Thank you for your consideration and time.
Christina Jones. Christina Jones.
I'm so sorry. All right. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you tonight. I appreciate the update on the testing program, and I was unclear whether the testing had begun or the next steps. In addition to testing, I'm interested in learning more about what is being done with further mitigation methods. Outdoor seating does not exist for all schools yet, and air purifiers in classrooms are a hit or a miss. Nothing from the district oversight has changed since the start of the school year. What are we waiting for? Delta took us all by surprise and threw us for a loop at the beginning of the school year. We came to you asking for metrics, transparency, and requirements, and have received the bare minimum. What is the plan for the next surge? I want to know that we have learned something from all of this to be better prepared for the next wave. Leadership isn't about having all the right answers. It's about putting a plan together that is transparent for all to see. I don't know how I can trust you to have a plan B when I'm unclear as to what your plan A was. With the weather getting colder, I understand that outdoor seating is not going to be the preferred location for many in our schools, but how have we improved the air quality in our cafeterias? The sit and wait game that the district is playing is putting our children and families in the line of fire. Vaccines are still not available for our elementary school students, and I fear that due to the declining number of COVID cases, we will soon be hearing about how the importance of seeing each other's faces outweigh the health of our children, family, and friends. I'm exhausted with this fight just as much as anyone else, but I'm not willing to give up on our children because it was an easier decision for you to wait it out. Last year, the message was all children need to be in the classroom. So this year, we did just that. Why are we not bending over backwards to ensure that they stay in their classrooms? We are still in the middle of a pandemic, whether or not you want to believe it. We are seeing progress now with the Delta surge, but it seems that some people think that it's all over. If we treat this like an on-off switch, it will come back just as suddenly as it did before, and then we'll be stuck trying to remedy a problem that we have already faced. So what are you doing, Chair Sutton and Superintendent Moore, to lead the district today to proactively solve the problems we will undoubtedly face tomorrow? Thank you.
Michelle Marie Morrow.
Hi, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am a registered nurse as well as a mother of 5 kids, and I'm also a follower of Jesus. And I wanted to share this verse. In the book of James, we're told to consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, knowing that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. We all agree. The past 19 months have been a trial in many different ways. I wanted to express to the Wake County Board of Education my appreciation for your decisions over the last 19 months. You see, if you had not chosen to close down schools and send children home with the computers, we still wouldn't really know what's being taught in our classrooms. So thank you. If you're not cowered to the demands of the NCAE in keeping our schools closed longer than any other industrialized nation, we would never have looked into the workings of the NCAE and realized that it has direct links to the Progressive Party, and less than 18% of our educators belong to that organization, thus casting a shadow on the NCAE as a whole and the power that they wield. So thank you. If you'd not fought to keep critical race theory in our curriculum, the majority of the country wouldn't even know the ulterior motive that the federal government controls in our schools. So for that, we thank you. If you had allowed our children to come back to school and left the decision of masks up to parents, many who have researched the scientific facts about COVID, masks, and the risk factors, and chosen to keep their children home or put them in private schools that promote freedom of choice and focus on education rather than indoctrination, they wouldn't have done that. So for that, I thank you. For the past 17 months, as teachers, doctors, parents, students, teachers, concerned citizens have filled this building with facts, with scientific analysis, psychological discussions, personal testimonies, and struggling stories of their youngsters, you have turned a deaf ear. You've doubled down on your agenda to obey the U.S. Department of Education, as well as the myriad of highly paid appointed members of the DPI, the DHHS, and even Superintendent Moore's office. You've demonstrated an air of superiority and contempt, and for that, I thank you. Because for your responses or lack thereof, you have gotten parents off of their couches, and they are now taking responsibility for their children's education, which definitely should have happened a long time ago. Your attitudes have also empowered people who never thought they would be involved in civics to get involved, to run for local positions like the school board, because they've learned that just because you are elected to a position does not make you the expert in decision making. It gives you the opportunity, yes, to serve your people. I believe we are on the cusp of a huge change here in Wake County and even throughout our country, and you have much to do with that change. So for that, I thank you.
So that concludes tonight's public comment speakers. That moves us to our consent agenda. Can I entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So moved.
I had a motion from Ms. Johnson-Hostler, a second from Dr. Martin to approve tonight's consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor show by sign of aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Consent agenda is approved. That moves us to the action portion of our agenda. First up is the name for the new Cooperative Innovative High School in Morrisville Research Triangle Park area. Ms. Parker, good evening.
Good evening, Chair Sutton, Superintendent Moore, ladies and gentlemen of the board, always a pleasure. On December 12th of 2018, the Board of Education acquired 44.14 acres adjacent to Parkside Elementary School for use as a middle school and a small high school. Building on the success of ongoing early college high schools in concert with Wake Technical Community College, an agreement on the terms and conditions of a memorandum of agreement between the board and Wake Tech to support the location and operation of a cooperative innovative high school on Wake Tech's RTP campus has been reached. Consideration of approval by Wake Tech's Board of Trustees occurred at their meeting today. The school is currently slated for a 2022 opening. Naming for the new cooperative innovative high school is now required. In accordance with Board Policy 9300, the following names are offered for consideration: Western Wake College and Career Academy, Morrisville College and Career Academy, Research Triangle Park Early College of Information and Biotechnologies, and Wake Early College of Information and Biotechnologies. In accordance with Board Policy 9300, the names were offered to the Facilities Committee on October 13th. After due consideration and robust discussion, the Facilities Committee recommended that the name selection of Wake Early College of Information and Biotechnologies be brought forward to the full board for consideration today. The Facilities Committee further recommended that for internal and marketing purposes, that the school location on Wake Tech's Research Triangle Park campus be referred to as the Wake Early College for Information and Biotechnologies Morrisville campus, and that the future location at the Parkside Middle School location be referred to as Wake Early College of Information and Biotechnologies at the Parkside campus. Pursuant to board input, staff recommends selection of Wake Early College of Information and Biotechnologies. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And once again, Dr. Kimberly Lane and Paul Domenico from Magnet and Curriculum Enhancement are available if there are any specific questions about the program.
Dr. Martin.
On behalf of the Facilities Committee, with robust discussion, I'd like to move going forward with the name as recommended, the Wake Early College for Information Biotechnologies with campuses at Mooresville and Parkside.
Second. I had a motion from Dr. Martin, second from Mr. Hegarty, to name the new Cooperative Innovative High School in Morrisville Research Triangle Park area as the Wake Early College of Information and Biotechnologies. Is there any discussion? Mr. Hegarty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to thank Dr. Martin and Dr. Lane and Ms. Parker for the wonderful discussion that we had during facilities. You know, anytime there's the naming of a new school, especially one kind of as new and exciting, and this one, everyone has their favorites, but I thought we were able to really go through a lot of the issues and find a way to honor all of our partners in this proposal. So I really appreciate everybody's input and feedback and think we came up with a good solution. Thank you.
Mrs. Kushner.
Thank you, Chair Sutton. And I also want to reiterate the discussion we had at the facilities around the academic innovation that this school represents and the continuing, despite, that just the continuing choices and creativity and focus on curriculum that the school system continues to have during very strained times. So I heard great things about the open house that was held virtually from the early colleges. I just think it shows that the innovation in education is happening in our public education system, and we need to emphasize that academic excellence. Thank you.
Dr. Martin.
I think it's also appropriate to acknowledge President Rawls and all the members of Wake Tech. They've been outstanding partners, and this will be another great opportunity to partner between Wake County Schools and the community college system.
Indeed.
All right. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion, show by sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Ayes have it. The new name for the Cooperative Innovative High School in Morrisburg, which is Triangle Park, will be the Wake Early College of Information and Biotechnologies.
Thank you,
so
ladies and
much.
gentlemen.
Next item up is the revision to the 2021-2022 Wake County Public Schools System calendar. Ms. Tamani Anderson. You don't have to rush. You're all right.
Good evening. I didn't realize I was next. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. On behalf of the Wake County Public School System leadership, I am requesting a revision to the current 21-22 calendar. Specifically, the change would extend the current Veterans Day holiday break by 1 day to include Friday, November 12th, for all Wake County Public School System staff and students. The purpose of this request is to provide an extended Veterans Day break for those honoring our military families and a chance for employees to use a remote work day to help them reflect and prepare for the remainder of the semester. The district can implement this change by using banked instructional time to ensure the required 1,024 hours of instruction is delivered for the 21-22 school year. Year-round Track 3, who are tracked out on November 12th, and the day of reflection and preparation will be held on November 15th, 2021.
Vice Chair Mahaffey.
Chair Sutton, I make a motion that we accept this revision to the calendar.
And that would include the waiver of Board Policy 7503 as listed on the précis?
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I got a motion from Ms. Vice Chair Mahaffey, second from Mrs. Scott, to approve staff's request to change or revise the 2021-22 calendar, and this includes a waiver of Board Policy 7503. Is there any discussion? Vice Chair Mahaffey.
Thank you, Chair Sutton. I think last year we saw these calendar changes coming and we would brace ourselves, and it's hard and it's never easy to change a calendar. I think this year, given vacancies, given what our staff has been going through, covering for those vacancies, having time for our children to spend a little more time with their families, having our staff have a moment to reflect and to plan is appropriate during this time, and having it butt up to the Veterans Day holiday, which is also a day of reflection for our nation, is appropriate. I don't think any of us take a calendar change lightly after what we went through last year, and I appreciate staff taking the time to make this possible.
Mrs. Carter.
Thank you. And yes, I would agree. I guess I'm a little worried that it didn't make the agenda on Friday, just for the public to be able to have awareness and have that information known, what was going to be presented tonight. And I guess the other question I have, I know it's 1 day, but for many of our students, they are struggling academically. And I also realize, though, many of our students are struggling emotionally. I've heard quite a few, especially at middle and particularly high school level, who are struggling. And I acknowledge the importance of education, but many times we can't get to the education with other issues that are going on. And I just want to state that at the table because I know that's real for a lot of our families. The emotional piece is what I'm referring to. And I just want to state that because I feel like it's very important, because not only for our staff, our school staff, and everything that they're having to go through, I also feel like our families and our students as well. I'm just wondering around, though, because it is less than a month away, any supports that are going to be in place for those who are needing assistance with childcare, or is there any work around that being done as a district?
And Ms. Carter, we have contacted the Y, Raleigh Park and Rec, and all of those folks, so they are aware of this potential change that, depending on where we land tonight, they're already moving on.
And kind of piggybacking on my other thoughts I had there, sorry, I was just trying to, because it just got posted. So I was wondering if there was a way that we could have communication go out to our employees and also our families about reminders of support that are available for those in our district.
The social emotional support that
Yes.
we've got options available, of course. certainly.
If this does get approved tonight as part of some of the, just because sometimes, like, we get so many emails, and I understand we don't want to keep sending that, but sometimes if it's sent at the right time, folks can use it, and some might choose to use that during this time.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Dr. Martin.
I think it's appropriate to recognize, and thank you for this recommendation, that we set aside banked hours as well as potential emergency days in the event of, particularly in the fall, in the event of tropical storms. And I think we're all thankful that we did not have a tropical storm, but I think we did have a pandemic storm. So I think this is a very appropriate use of banked hours and will give time for reflection, time for some of that, frankly, mental health breather. And so I actually think this is respecting the different kind of storm that we had, and thus a very appropriate use of our banked emergency weather days. Thank you.
Mrs. Scott.
Thank you. And I also wanted to express my gratitude to staff for bringing this to us. It's a small, in terms of what we would like to be able to do, but I also appreciate that unlike weather, which we cannot predict 3 weeks in advance, this does allow our partners in Parks and Recreation and child care providers to be able to help us in any way that families may need for that. So I appreciate all of this. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, show by sign of aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. The motion to revise the calendar is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Board Policy 2610, Board Attorney on its first reading. Good. Dr. Gardner.
Chair Sutton, Superintendent, and members of the school board, good evening. I'm here to present to you Policy 2610, Board Attorney for first reading. Policy 2610, Board Attorney, is a revised policy, and the revisions reflect updates recommended by the North Carolina School Boards Association and district staff. When given final board approval tonight, it will replace the current version of this policy. In your backup materials, the revision is highlighted in a different color to show you the different phrase that was extended in this particular paragraph. This revision was reviewed at the September 28, 2021 Policy Committee meeting. So tonight, I request from the board approval for first reading of Policy 2610, Board Attorney.
Ms. Kushner.
Thank you, Chair Sutton. I move approval of the revised policy, Board Policy 2610, Board Attorney, for its first reading.
Second.
Motion from Mrs. Kushner, second from Ms. Johnson-Hostler to approve Board Policy 2610, Board Attorney on its first reading. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, show by sign of aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Board Policy 2610, Board Attorney, is approved on its first reading.
Thank you very much.
Next up is Board Policy 6330, Insurance for Student Transportation Services, on its first reading.
Chair Sutton, Superintendent Moore, and members of the board, good evening. I'm here tonight to present to you the first reading of Policy 6330, Insurance for Student Transportation Services. Policy 6330 is a new policy. It was created by the NC School Boards Association as part of their Policies to Lead the Schools manual, and is a part of the policy migration project. When given final approval, it will replace current policy 7140, student transportation insurance. It was reviewed at the September 28, 2021 Policy Committee meeting, And tonight, we request the board's approval of the first reading of Policy 6330, Insurance for Student Transportation Services.
Ms. Kushner.
Thank you, Chair Sutton. And likewise, I move approval of Board Policy 6330, Insurance for Student Transportation Services, for its first reading. Again, it was part of the policy migration project, so just working with the School Board Association to update our policies.
Got a motion from Mrs. Kushner, a second from Dr. Martin to approve Board Policy 6330, Insurance for Student Transportation Services, on its first reading. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor show by the sign of aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Board Policy 6330, Insurance for Student Transportation Services, is approved on its first reading.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I can entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Chair Sutton, I'd like to make a motion that the board enter closed session to consider confidential personnel information protected under GS 143-318.11A1, A3, and A6, to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided with GS 143-318.11A3.
Got a motion from Vice Chair Mahaffey, second from Mrs. Kushner, to go into closed session for the reasons just stated and as printed on our agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor show by sign of aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. We are now in closed session. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.